Hey, Bella here. I'm 23 years old, and I have big dreams of becoming a talent architect. I was born in a pretty normal family. Don't get me wrong, I adore my family a lot, but they don't understand my deep passion. I didn't want to stay in my dreamy childhood town and have some ordinary job. I wanted to design amazing houses and eco-friendly hotels. I studied super hard on my degree, and it all worked out, as this major architect company called the Star-Cross Estate Company offered me a job. And better still, it meant I got to continue staying in sunny California. OMG, talk about amazing! Well, at least I thought it was down to my hard work and talents. You see, my boyfriend Ed also works for the Star-Cross Estate. I met Ed at a college party a few years ago. At that time, I was still a student and he was an alumnus. We bonded over our love of modern architecture and ecological buildings. It took over a year for me to build up the courage to confess my feelings to him. We were at this cafe near college, and I was so nervous when I mumbled it out. Luckily, he figured out what I was trying to say, so he held my hand, then said,
"Yes, Bella, I'm such an amateur when it comes to matters of the heart, but I feel the same about you."
I fell madly in love with him, and being around Ed, well, it was when I was at my happiest. Then, after my graduation ceremony, I mentioned how I wanted to find a job nearby so I could stay in Cali and be close to him. He said there was a position going at his workplace, and if I gave him a copy of my CV, he'd pass it on. He often told me that he could hook me up with a job there when I graduated, but I just thought he was joking. I mean, he was just some intern, right? It was not like he could help me to get a job at a large company like the Star-Cross Estate. Anyway, I still gave it to him to find a chance. Then a week later, I got called in for an interview. Then later that day, they called me back saying I'd got the job. I almost screamed when I was running to tell him in excitement, but he just smiled and said,
"You didn't trust me back then, did you? Congrats, my new colleague."
I was over the moon and couldn't wait to start my next chapter. On my first day, I was super nervous, but Ed said I could go in with him. As we walked in, the receptionist looked at Ed and said, "Morning, Mr. Stratford. Your father would like to talk to you in his office." What? I stared at him open-mouthed. He quickly explained to me how he was not only the head of the project management department, but his father owned the company. I'd been dating him for over a year, and he never thought fit to tell me this. It was true that he didn't need to tell me about his family, but this fact was too overwhelming. I had a job in the design department of a prestigious architecture company. And yes, I was the boss's son's girlfriend. This made me kinda awkward. I'd always believed that I could get this job because the company saw my ability, not because the one who introduced me was the heir. But soon, I surely would show that I deserved to be there, regardless of who I was dating. But everything was not that easy. Word soon got around the office that I was Ed's girlfriend, and I was constantly getting dirty looks from other people. Once, I was in the toilet cubicle and overheard some girls talking about me. One girl said, "Talk about favoritism. The new girl in the design department didn't even experience one day as a trainee." Then another girl said, "That bumpkin wouldn't survive for long. Maybe she only lasts a week. Wanna bet?" Of course no. Who will we bet with when we're on the same side? So, hello from the other side. I just couldn't hold it and walked out to see who was bad-mouthing me. And I saw that one of the girls was Diane, who worked in the sales department. What made it worse was she'd always been super nice to me up until this point. I could see their funny faces when they saw me there. "Don't act like that. You are still good girls, not talking behind my back, but my front," I said, then left them frozen inside. I thought that would be the end of it, but it turns out it was just the beginning. Since that day, Diane sneered and made nasty comments whenever I passed her, such as, "Yuck, have you seen the state of her shoes?" And, "Someone should tell her frizzy hair is not a trend." I tried my best to ignore her, but then one time, I got a really strange email from a customer telling me how she was conflicted if she should go with my design or not, after what my colleague told her about me. It turns out, Diane had told this customer that I was an immoral person who stole other people's designs and tried passing them off as my own. Saying snide comments about me was one thing, but bad-mouthing my work? Now, that was a step too far. I waited until Diane came out of her meeting, then I pulled her aside and said, "Look, You can't go around saying I steal other designers' work and use them as my own. I've worked hard to get here, and saying stuff like that is not fair. She snorted. Yeah, right. You're only here because you went crying to your boyfriend for a job. I'm here because I'm good at what I do. Whatever. You're not good enough, and he'll see that eventually and choose me instead. What? Suddenly, this all made sense. She was being a mean girl because she had a crush on my boyfriend, and she was jealous he was with me, not her. So I kept my cool when I said to her, if your problem is Ed, and you think you're good enough to deserve him instead of me, you should focus on him only. Don't change your arrow direction to me and my work. You'll get nothing. Diane seemed really mad. So, okay, the one who should get mad was me, not her. Luckily for me, my boss Jim wasn't like Diane. Instead, he was a really nice guy who didn't treat me differently just because of who my boyfriend was. One time, I was snooping through his profile, purely for project purposes, and I discovered he went to the same college as me, just at different times. I mentioned this to him, and he smiled and said,
Yeah, that's where I met your boyfriend. He's a good friend of mine.
Oh, I hated the word boyfriend at work, so I just ignored it and changed the subject. But anyway, it was good news, right? Jim was Ed's best friend, so at least I could trust him and learn from his work experience. Since I'd worked at Starcross Estate, I often had lunch with Ed, Jim, and Ellie. Ellie was Ed's half-sister, and also his assistant. She was really sweet and ridiculously beautiful. The way she talked and acted made me overwhelmed. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she was such the cleverest and gentlest girl I'd ever met. Gradually, I spent more time after work with Ed, Jim, and Ellie. We usually spent all dinner time discussing work. To me, 3 of them were the colleagues that I always wanted to work with. But, except business things, I didn't know a lot about Jim and Ellie's personal life. Ellie was sweet and all, but she was also a kind of private person and somehow distant from others. Except for Ed, of course. And about Jim, he even had never been close to me and only seemed to talk about work stuff. They were both close to Ed, so I wanted to make friends. But, well, maybe they just saw me as their colleague. As for work, yeah, that was going pretty great. But then in true mean girl fashion, Diane struck again. One day, she stormed over to my desk, slammed a folder full of my designs down onto it, and started yelling at me. You've not followed the customer's requirements, and they're not happy. I replied, Oh, I'm sorry. I'll fix it right away. It's not good enough? You're clearly not good enough to be here. Your work's sloppy, and you don't listen. I forced a smile back and said, Okay, I'll fix it. She didn't let me finish my words, but just rudely walked away while all of my colleagues were looking at me suspiciously. This whole incident made me feel super deflated. I didn't understand it. I reread the design requirements through and had never seen those orders. Hadn't I? I tried to forget about it all and enjoy my evening, as I was out for dinner with Ed, Jim, and Ellie. We were just quietly enjoying the meal as usual when Ed and Ellie had unexpected work pop up and had to leave. Jim gave me a lift home, and I thought it would be a super awkward and silent journey. But then he asked me if I was okay about what Diane had done to me. I didn't expect him to care about my problem. I always thought that Jim was a stone cold who cared about nothing but work. But turned out, he was so delicate and caring. Then he continued.
As a head of my department, I'm sorry that I can't step in to defend you if the problem isn't big enough. Because, it could make the situation worse, and you might suffer more from everyone's gossip.
I understand, I honestly said.
I think you're a very talented designer, and Ed's girlfriend or not, there's no doubt that you're the best person for the job. If I was you, I'd carry on doing what you're doing and show them all how deserving you are to be there.
Jim smiled and patted my shoulder when he said that. I really appreciated Jim's words. I knew he was a nice guy, but he seemed so work-focused and could come off kinda cold. So it was good to see another side to him. I took his advice, and I put all my motivation into creating the best work possible. I read through all the job requirements I was sent at least 3 times and jotted down notes so no one could catch me out again. And I often spent my breaks in the office learning more about the company or discussing architecture with Jim. I was finally beginning to feel like I belonged there, and that my colleagues were beginning to believe this too. Little did I know, another storm was waiting for me. That day, when I was about to leave work, an email from Diane popped up. I opened it thinking it was work-related, but no. It said, break up with Ed right now before everyone knows what a loser you are. He loves me, not you, and I have proof. Attached to the email were a bunch of pictures. Seriously? Could this actually be happening? My heart was pounding like crazy, and my hand was shaking as I clicked on the first image. Hey, Bella here, the girl with the huge dreams of becoming a world-class architect. So, thanks to my boyfriend Ed, I got a job at the super prestigious Starcross Estate Company. I then found out that he was the owner's son. Because of this, some of my colleagues took an instant disliking to me. The worst of them all was this girl called Diane, who made snide comments toward me and kept on undermining my work. But then she went too far when she sent me an email telling me to break up with Ed because he loved her, not me, and she had pictures to prove it. I tried to stay calm as I clicked through the pictures she sent me. One was taken on the recent business trip they went on and was of them sitting next to each other, which obviously didn't prove anything. Another picture was of Diane resting her head on the shoulder of a shirtless man. Okay, so his build was similar to Ed's, but his face wasn't in the picture, so it could have been anyone. There were also images of text messages, allegedly between them both. One message said, "I don't like Bella anymore. I love you, bae." But the fact that Ed used an icon in this message screen capture made me suspect that it was just fake evidence. I knew Ed never uses memes and detests slang. He always types messages out in full sentences with perfect punctuation. As I looked through the images again, I thought that if somebody else sent me this email, I might believe it. But this person was Diane. She showed her jealousy towards my relationship with Ed all the time, so she might do this just to destroy our love. I decided not to let her bother me. So I sent some pictures back to her of Ed and me happy together. Then I prepared to go home. I guessed this made her angry, as the next day she messaged me demanding that I meet her for coffee after work. I tried ignoring her, but geez, she was so persistent. When I blocked her on social media, she bombarded me with messages via her work email. I had to agree to meet her in the end just so I could get some peace. I walked into the cafe to see her drinking a coffee and eating a muffin. She waved me over like we were friends or something, then said, "You are so stubborn. Ed doesn't love you, so break up with him and move on. He likes me, not you." I glared at her. "Oh yeah? So when did this so-called affair start?" She pauses for ages before saying, a month. No, 2 months ago." "Okay, and how do you know he loves you?" There was another long pause before she said, "He tells me all the time." Duh! I told her she was being ridiculous, and she should try finding a real-life boyfriend, not making up stories about mine. As I walked out of there, she shouted after me, "You'll regret this, Bella. Just you wait and see." As crazy as Diane's behavior was, it did get me thinking. There was no smoke without fire, and it was true that Ed had been acting differently around me recently. He barely had lunch with me anymore. He canceled on our date plans due to a work commitment. And then when I made dinner reservations for the two of us, he brought Jim and Ellie along too. Then the business trips became a more regular thing. They were almost every weekend and on random weekdays. Whenever he was away, he never rang me or sent me a message. His excuse was he was busy, but how hard was it to send a text? And the same this time, he was having a long business trip to New York. He went with his team, which included Ellie. And you won't believe, and Diane. Ugh! This made me even more worried. What if Diane wasn't as crazy as I thought? What if Ed really was having an affair with her, and now they had a 1-month trip together? I was very anxious about all of this, but I think I would wait for Ed to come back to meet and ask him directly. It had no solid evidence, and I should believe my boyfriend, right? Anyway, we had a huge project at work, so I tried my best to suppress my worries and focus on my job. Luckily, Jim was always there to offer me advice and help me every time I struggled. Actually, he was a really great guy. And then one time, he totally saved my ass. That day, it was almost home time when my computer suddenly turned itself off and I hadn't saved my drawings. It wouldn't turn back on and I freaked out. There was a full day's unsaved work there. Ugh! How could I be so careless? I was fumbling around underneath my desk trying to fix my computer when Jim appeared and asked me,
"What are you doing down there?"
I don't know what happened, but I've lost everything I've done today on the Ernest project." He said,
"Let me take a look."
Then we spent the next 3 hours trying to fix it. Luckily, Jim turned out to be good with technology, so he managed to restore all of my data. I was so thankful. Then I said, "Thank you so much. You must be hungry now? Would you like to go eat something?" My treat for helping me. He smiled as he said,
Sure.
"Okay, so it was too late. All the nearby restaurants were shut, so we popped into the convenience store and grabbed some instant noodles, candy bars, and coffees. But it wasn't so bad, actually. Jim smiled and told me,
This was so fun. It reminds me of my college time.
We both laughed. Then we talked about our hobbies and goals for the future and stuff. The next day, I finally got through to Ed. When talking to him, I still appeared to be fine, but I started to tell him more about my problems and pressures at work and said that I hoped he would come back soon because it would make me more comfortable. I expected him to reassure me and also say that he wanted to meet me too, but no. He told me that lately he was very busy with many projects and I should just ask Jim for work-related help, as he was my boss. Jim was also a close friend he trusted very much and could take care of me when he was not around. I was super disappointed with Ed's answer, so I said, "Yep, Jim might be nice to me, but he's my boss, not my boyfriend. He didn't have any responsibility for staying by my side and protecting me like what I need from you. You've changed, Ed. You don't want to be with me anymore, do you?"
Bella, stop overthinking. I'm on a work trip. I'm busy. That's all.
I was so mad, and I hung up and I refused to return his apology message. Then, for the rest of the week, I put all my focus into work and tried to block all things Ed-related out of my mind, but it was hard. I missed him like crazy. Then the weekend arrived, and I was relaxing with a book when I heard my doorbell. A part of me was hoping it would be Ed, only when I opened the door, I saw Jim standing there. He said,
Hi, Bella. Sorry for just showing up. Ed asked me to take you out. I think he's afraid you're in stress overload with work or something.
On hearing this, I didn't know whether I should feel happy or sad. So Ed did care about me, didn't he? But then, why wasn't it him at my door, not Jim? So I said, "Thank you. That's really nice, but I'm not really in the mood." He replied,
It's no bother. In fact, I know just the place to make you feel better. You may even get some inspiration for our project.
To be honest, I was kind of curious. And if it was work-related, then it would be dumb to miss out, right? To my complete surprise, he took me to the new Museum of Architecture. There were so many amazing models on display, and Jim was a great tour guide. He even led me into a room displaying a 3D model of a city hanging in the air. OMG! It was incredible! I hadn't smiled so much in a long time. Being around Jim was great, but he didn't make me feel like I wasn't good enough or make out I was overthinking things. Instead, I could relax and just be me. Afterward, we went to a wine bar and he bought me a cocktail and we sat down in this cozy booth. He smiled at me and asked,
How do you feel now?
I replied, "Much better. Thanks. And thank you for persuading me to go out. I've wanted to go to that museum for ages, but it seems Ed's always too busy to take me. Anyway, thank you. I had a great time. We started on the shots, and it wasn't long before I began to feel tipsy. The problem was that the more I drank, the more emotional I felt, and before I could stop myself, I ended up pouring my heart out to Jim. You know what? Recently, I'm not fine at all. I'm stressed at work, I'm stressed with all this Diane drama, and now even Ed is stressing me out." He raised an eyebrow.
Ed? Really? Why are you worried about him?
I replied, "Diane keeps telling me she's having an affair with him. She even sent some photos, but they didn't seem very legit. But these days, Ed is so different. He's so cold and flat towards me. He couldn't even be bothered to come and see me. He sent you instead. No offense." Jim sympathetically looked at me and sighed. He didn't say anything. Then, because I'd drunk too much, I didn't think before I asked him, "If Ed really betrayed me, then would you be on his side or mine?" There was an awkward pause, so I laughed it off. "Ignore me. I know you're Ed's friend, so of course you'll be on his side, right?" But then, to my surprise, Jim answered, "Hey, it's me, Bella again. Are you curious about the next part of my story? So, before I tell you what happened next to me, just have a quick refresher. In the last episode, I got to work in Starcross Estate Company, and there's this girl called Diana, who constantly bothers me. She even said that my boyfriend Ed loved her and told me to break up with him. Of course, I'd not be fooled by her, but the fact that Ed's behavior became more and more cold to me made me feel anxious. Later on, Ed had a long business trip with Diane. Whilst I was in need of his reassurance, he still kept his coldness towards me. That's why we ended up having a big fight. Then he sent his friend Jim to take me out for the day, instead of coming round himself. I had a wonderful day with Jim, but later that night, I may have ended up drinking one too many cocktails and shots and telling Jim how upset I felt. Then I asked him whose side he'd be on if Ed ever betrayed me. Jim looked a bit awkward, but then he said,
Ed's a good guy with morals, and he's mad about you. I couldn't imagine him ever looking at another girl.
I drained my drink. Yeah, I know, bad idea. Then I slurred out, You have to say that. You're his best friend. You might just think I'm overthinking stuff, but you're not a girl. You don't understand how much it hurts. Jim looked at me with a firm voice.
He said, I truly believe him. So I'm going to make a deal with you that if Ed ever did cheat on you, then I'd help you get your own back.
At this point, I was really surprised. But then I knew that even though Jim was so certain as much, it was only due to his complete trust in Ed. So I just shrugged it off and gave him a smile. After that, Jim took me home. He helped me to open the car door, and before I entered my house, he said,
Bella, don't think too much about it at all.
That night, I lay there thinking about what Jim had said to me at the bar. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was true that I was overthinking things. And also, if I kept being like this, wasn't this exactly what Diane wanted me to act like? Geez, it seemed she was way smarter than she looked, as she got into my head. I couldn't let her win. I needed to trust in Ed. So I texted Ed. I'm sorry. I was so stressed that I blamed you, but I was wrong to do this. I miss you so much. Although it's midnight, he replied immediately saying,
It's okay. I'm sorry too. I promise I'll spend more time with you. I'll be around more in 2 weeks.
His words made me feel a lot better. Finally, I could rest my mind and fall asleep. The next 2 weeks seemed to drag on forever. I missed him so much. Okay, so he didn't call me all that much, but it was okay. He promised he'd spend more time with me soon. So I decided to trust him. 2 weeks passed by. He'd fly back home on this Sunday, and I arrived at the airport to pick him up. I dressed up in a pretty dress, held a bouquet of flowers, and waited for him at the boarding gate. Normally, I hesitated to do stuff like this because I knew there'd be a company shuttle coming to pick him and his colleagues up, but I'd waited for this moment long enough. Besides, I honestly thought he'd be super excited to see me. I waited for him there for about 30 minutes, and the moment I saw him, I waved and ran over to him. But all of my excitement vanished when he just gave me a cold look. He told me there was no need to do this and that he had to go back to the company to report the work immediately so he couldn't go out with me. This made me feel so down. I almost burst into tears, but I tried to hold it back as I said I understood. As he walked off, I stood there still clutching the flowers and feeling embarrassed. Even worse, I met Diane walking behind Ed. She laughed sarcastically and said, See, I told you he doesn't love you. He loves me. He's just busy, I croaked back. There was no way I was giving her the satisfaction of thinking she had one up on me. Yeah, whatever. She rolled her eyes. You realize we have today off as the report's not due until tomorrow, so it seems to me like your boyfriend's just not into you. Diane grinned at me and walked off. At that point, I was so hurt and bewildered. I tried not to believe her, but there was no denying that Ed's reaction had been unexpected. I drove home feeling like a deflated balloon. Then I received a message from Ed.
Sorry, I'm just so busy. Next Saturday is better. I'll come over to yours and we can watch a movie together.
I felt excited at first, but thinking about his coldness at the airport, I felt a bit confused. Talk about hot and cold. I just didn't know where I stood with him anymore. Finally, I just texted him back. Yeah, sure. The next morning, I showed up at work, but I couldn't stop myself from trying to catch a glimpse of Ed. For the rest of the week, I kept an eye on him to see where he went, what he did, and if he met anyone strange. When he said he had to work overtime, I even called Ellie to check if he was being honest, but she confirmed this. Maybe I was being paranoid. One day, after a long working day, I felt a bit stressed, so I called Ed and said I wanted to go out with him to let off some steam. He messaged back saying that he had some family thing he couldn't get out of. I was disappointed, but I ended up going to the mall with my friend instead. We were sitting in the foyer eating donuts when I saw Ed walking into a jewelry store. This was so strange. What was he doing here? And why had he lied to me? I followed him to the front of the store and overheard him saying he needed to get a present for Ellie Stafford. Okay, so talk about a relief. So this was his family thing. Maybe today was his sister's birthday or something. But he still could have brought me along with him. Oh well, men just didn't think sometimes. Finally, Saturday arrived. Ed told me to prepare some snacks for the movie while he grabbed a quick shower. As he closed the bathroom door, I saw him leave his phone on my bed. I know it's a bad thing to do, but I couldn't stop myself from checking his private world. Maybe it's due to my worries and insecure feelings lately. I scrolled through all his old messages, but there was just a bunch of boring messages from his work colleagues. Suddenly, he opened the door and saw me using his phone. Startled, I immediately threw his phone onto the bed and jumped back. Ed looked annoyed and said,
"Are you checking my phone?"
I replied, "Sorry, Ed, He didn't let me finish the sentence. He angrily told me not to do it again because he didn't like to have a possessive girlfriend who wants to control his life. At this point, I was super embarrassed. Therefore, I timidly said, "I just want to see pictures from your latest business trip. Oh, I prepared your favorite snacks here. Come here." I ran to him and pulled him over to my bed. My distraction plan seemed to work, and we had a really nice night together. As good as it was, doubts still lingered in my mind. He'd just been acting so oddly recently. To be honest, the feeling of doubting the person you love is not pleasant at all. So I decided to have a clear talk with him on our upcoming 2-year anniversary. We really needed to have a frank talk. This was on Saturday night. He took me to this amazing restaurant, and the food was delicious. As great as it was, I knew I still needed to talk to him, and it was now or never. I opened my mouth to tell him how I felt when he said,
"It's my mom's birthday next week, and I'd love you to come over to my house and celebrate with my family."
Oh my God, this was such a surprise. Finally, after 2 years, I'd get to meet the rest of his family. This proved that he really loved me and was serious about our relationship. Right? I was so happy that I said yes and gave up on talking about my worries. Then we talked a bit about what gift we should buy for his mom. Then suddenly, Ed received a phone call. He went out to answer it, and when he came back, he said an urgent job had come up and he had to leave. As much as this sucked, I forced out a smile and told him it was fine, and I could make my own way home. He said sorry, hugged me, and left in a hurry. But just a few minutes later, my phone beeped. It was a message from Diane saying, "The Redmore Hotel, room 155. Come and see us for yourself." Smirk face icon. This had to be just one of Diane's games, right? But it seemed so strange how she'd messaged me just after Ed had left. I peered around me. Was she here spying on me? But I couldn't see her anywhere. I needed to know the truth, so I hopped in a taxi and went to the Redmore Hotel. When I got there, I was so anxious. I stood outside of room 155 and pulled out my phone to call Ed. He didn't answer, but I heard Ed's familiar ringing sound from inside of the room. At this point, I really froze and tried one more call and still heard the ringing of the phone. Unconsciously, I banged on the door and screamed out for them to let me in. I pounded the door so hard that my hands turned red. I shouted, "Open the door, you cheaters!" till my throat was sore. That moment, I didn't even know what was occupying my mind. I just knew that my heart was crushed, that I could hardly breathe, and my tears kept shedding. Moments later, the door opened, and Ed stared back at me. "Hi, it's me, Bella again." From the outside, it seemed like I'm a lucky girl who was achieving her goals one by one, from an outstanding rich kid boyfriend to a dream job. But somehow, my life was going downhill uncontrollably. I was standing in front of a hotel room, banging the door, and hoped that my boyfriend wasn't inside. I didn't understand. Just a few minutes ago, we were together at our 2-year anniversary. He was so caring and sweet, and he even invited me to his mom's birthday party. Everything was great until his phone rang. He told me it was a work thing and he had to leave. His work thing should never have happened here. But to my horror, Ed answered the door. He was completely flummoxed when he saw me. and the moment I looked over his shoulder, I saw a woman. She was sitting on the bed and eating chocolates with her cool, calm mind. Not like me. Yep, you guessed it. It was Diane. "Hey, Bella. So nice of you to join us," she smirked at me. I just stared at them, open-mouthed. This was the worst day of my life, and I didn't know how I was meant to react. Worse still, Ed didn't seem bothered that I was upset. No, all he cared about was the fact that people were walking past and giving him odd looks. He pulled me inside of that disgusting room and closed the door. This was the last place I wanted to be, but I knew I deserved answers.
"Why are you here, Bella?"
He asked me. "You? And her?" I muttered out. Diane walked over to him and started rubbing his shoulders. Then she grinned at me and said, "It sure looks like it, doesn't it?"
"Bella, I'm sorry,"
he said. "Yeah, me too," I replied before I hurried out of there. Those traitors were welcome to each other. I was done. I was shaking so hard that I had to lean my back against the wall in the hotel lobby and burst out crying. Jeez, my heart ached so much. I wanted to hate Ed, but I still loved him. Worse still, I was still wearing the prettiest dress ever. At the start of the night, I'd felt like a princess, and now I felt like anything but a loser. I arrived home in tears, feeling so heartbroken and ashamed. What was wrong with me? How could he hurt me like this? Then my phone beeped. It was a message from Ed.
"I'm truly sorry, Bella. I will make it up to you."
What? How exactly did he intend on making it up to me? Was he going to give me a pay raise or get me promoted? Geez, how could he not see that this couldn't be fixed in that way? He'd ruined what we had. And what for? A bit of fun with some mean girl? I didn't even know who Ed was anymore. He changed so much, and now it felt like he was someone else entirely. The next day, I told Jim I was too sick to come into work. There was no way I could deal with seeing them all lovey-dovey together. But I would get over this. I'm a strong-minded person with big ambitions for my career, and there's no way I was letting them win. I just needed time for my body and mind to heal before I could go back to work and face them every day. But it was just so hard. I loved him and trusted him more than myself. Now the fact that he was cheating just broke my heart and drained my energy. I couldn't stop crying for days and eventually felt like this was just not right. I would just become a loser only if I accepted it. I obviously deserved better than some cheating idiot in my life. Yeah, right. I had to move on, keep chasing my dream, and try my hardest for my own life, instead of wasting my time for someone who didn't deserve it. I wasn't hiding anymore, so I went back to work. When I arrived there, Jim came over to me and told me all about this amazing project he wanted me to work on if, of course, I was feeling up to it. Thanks, Jim, as this was the exact thing I needed right now to give me the kick I needed to move on. I immediately told him yes. I was ready to put my all into it. However, on my first day back to work, everyone in the office was gossiping about me. I knew this was down to Diane bragging about how Ed broke up with me for her. To make it even worse, Diane kept on popping up in front of me and loudly telling anyone who would listen how an amazing boyfriend Ed was. Ugh, why couldn't she just leave me alone? She was Ed's girlfriend now. Why wasn't that enough for her? I just didn't understand why she was so mean. Worse still, I then had to endure some boring meeting with both Diane and Ed. I was sitting next to Jim and trying my best not to look over at them when Ed announced who the new sales manager was. I swear my heart plummeted when he said it was Diane. When we finished the work, she stormed over to me, swished her hair, then said, "This is such a great week for me. I now have an awesome job to go with my amazing new boyfriend." I ignored her, pretending like I didn't hear her, and tried my best not to look like she was getting to me. No way was I going to cry in front of the entire office. She looked straight at me as she said, "Of course, I expect all work to be the highest standard, else there will be consequences." Jim piped in,
"Diane, you're in charge of sales, not the entire company. Now, if you excuse us, We have work to do.
Thank goodness for Jim, as there's no way I could have endured that meeting any longer. Right when we were out of the meeting room, I asked Jim about my upcoming project. All I wanted now was putting my focus into my work. Only Jim apologized that he was busy doing some emergency things, then asked if we could discuss the new project over dinner. I immediately agreed. Not only was I super excited to find out more about it, but it meant I wouldn't be stuck at home with nothing but my thoughts. He took me to this cool diner, which I'd never been to before, as Ed was a bit of a snob when it came to eating out and had refused to go anywhere but posh restaurants. Jim told me how it was a creative design project for a park entrance gate, and he was allowing me to make all the important decisions. Whoa! This was my golden chance to show what I was capable of. Since then, Jim became my knight in shining armor. He let me eat lunch in his office, and it was so good being away from all my gaping colleagues. We talked about this big project, joked about, and shared our sandwiches. On one such occasion, I was eating one of his peanut butter and jelly sandwiches when he looked at me, hesitated, then said,
"Do you remember what we talked about? That time at that bar?"
I nervously laughed, as I wasn't expecting him to bring that up again. "Yeah, we talked a lot. I was a bit drunk that night," he replied.
"Yes, but I wasn't. I told you that I trusted Ed and believed he would never let you down, and that I would help you get payback if it ever turned out I was wrong about him."
I sighed. I remember. It was a ridiculous wager.
"Bella, I'm a man of word. I'm here if you need me to help you get your own back on him."
I can't say I hadn't daydreamed about getting revenge on him. In my mind, there were many occasions where I had, whether it be by chopping up his clothes or by sending an email to the entire office listing his worst habits. I could have made my daydream a reality, but I wasn't going to. Ed was just a bad guy, and even though what he did hurt like crazy, I was going to learn and grow from it. So I replied, "Thanks, Jim, but it's okay. I'm not going to do that because that isn't the type of person I want to be. And it wouldn't be fair to make you that type of person either. Thanks, though. It means a lot that you do that for me." I saw how relieved Jim looked. He was a man of his word. But there's no doubting that he was a great guy, and getting revenge on people, even if they deserved it, wasn't his thing. So I continued to put my all into this project and try not to let work dramas get me down. Then one day, I turned up at work and saw Mr. Stafford in the foyer talking to Diane. This was strange, as on the rare occasions he was here, he tended to shut himself away in his office. Not only that, he looked so angry. I watched as a terrified-looking Diane followed him to his office. Then a few minutes later, Ed rushed up there too. Talk about drama! Oh well, at least no one was talking about me for once. By lunchtime, news got around that Diane had been fired. It turned out that she'd sold our company's design to another rival company, and now they were using it on one of the other construction projects. Jim was very annoyed about this, and I saw him getting angry with Ed on the fire escape. I got his point. It felt like our creativity had been stolen to benefit a girl who they never should have hired in the first place. Of course, Ed insisted he hadn't known anything about it, and he'd ended it with Diane as soon as he found out. He'd also convinced his dad not to pursue legal action against her. I knew that this was probably just to save his own ass. I mean, she was his girlfriend, after all. She could have implicated him in it. Now, thanks to Diane, we'd have to change some of the design elements on that project. This was a massive undertaking, and my teammates and I had to work overtime, and it was intense. One morning, I walked into work feeling tired and lethargic at the prospect of another long day when I saw a bunch of roses on my desk. I opened the card to see they were from Ed, with a note saying,
"Bella, I miss you so much. Please give me another chance. Ed, X."
Wow. He'd just broken up with Diane, and now he wanted me back? Hey, it's Bella. Let's see what happened next in my story. But first, I'll recap some important events in the previous part. I caught my boyfriend cheating on me with mean girl Diane. Worse still, he didn't even seem to care. I had to go to work every day and see them together. Ugh. But then, it turns out Diane sold one of our designs to a rival company, so she was fired, and Ed broke up with her. You know what they say, karma and all. But then, I arrived at work to see a bunch of roses on my desk with a note from Ed saying he wanted me back. Talk about ridiculous! Did he seriously think some lame flowers and a rubbish note would make me go running back to him? No chance. I texted Ed. If the paper has been drawn in, no matter how hard you erase, it will leave marks behind, Ed. So there's no coming back from that. Then I threw the roses in the trash and carried on with my work. Only Ed didn't give up. Every morning, I arrived at work and saw a bunch of flowers on my desk. There was always a note attached with some soppy sentiment about how he missed me. Blah, blah, blah. Talk about embarrassing. And other people in my office started to notice. Once again, I was at the center of gossip. This made me really annoyed. I just wanted to focus on my work without having anything to do with Ed. So every time I saw those bouquets of flowers, I just stuck them in the trash and carried on with my day. Then one time, when I was on my break and scrolling through my phone, it beeped. It was Ellie, inviting me for coffee. This was strange, as we'd only hung out when I'd been with Ed. And as sweet as she was, we'd never been that close. I felt like I couldn't say no to her, as she was just too nice. Besides, I wondered what she wanted to say to me personally. So, I went and met her. At first, it was super awkward, and I tried filling the silent pauses by taking sips of my hot chocolate. Then she said, "Bella, I can see that the situation between you and Ed seems tense, so I want to help you two deal with it. Recently, I found Ed very upset. I know he acts like this strong, emotionless man at times, but it's all a front. Really, he's just a sweet, caring guy who knows he messed up. He made a dumb mistake, and now he's paying for it. He misses you so much, and now he's finding it hard to focus at work." I replied, "I don't know, Ellie. I don't believe a word he says anymore." She replied, "The whole Diane thing started when he was on a business trip, and he was feeling lonely and stressed. I know that's no excuse for what he did, but he knows now how much he messed up. Can you find it in your heart to forgive him?" Ellie paused, noticed my hesitant look, then continued, "He's been so down since you guys ended. I'm worried about him. He isn't himself, and people at work are starting to notice." Hearing Ellie say this confused me. I had no idea he cared this much. It had honestly felt like he wasn't that bothered, and the flowers were just for show. But perhaps he really had changed back to the Ed I loved and cared for. And maybe I was being selfish, not giving him another chance. I sighed, then said, "I get it, and I'll think about it, but it's not just that easy to forget the past." Ellie said she understood, and we chatted for a bit. Our conversation got me thinking a lot, especially about Ed-shaped things. There's no denying the fact that I still loved him, but would I have been foolish to give him another chance? Ed continued to send me daily flowers, but now it was also other gifts too, such as a box of my favorite donuts, a cuddly kitten plushie, and a signed copy of this amazing design book. He was certainly putting in a lot of effort, so maybe he really did still love me? To be honest, the words in his notes touched me and reminded me of the sweet memories from when we were together. But whenever I think of Ed and Diane's affairs, I felt uncomfortable, and if I went back to Ed, that feeling would linger on me for a long time. I really didn't know what to do. One night, I decided to take a walk to clear my head, and just happened to meet Jim as he was coming out of the convenience store. At a glance, he immediately knew I had something on my mind. He gave me a can of coffee and went for a walk with me. Jim broke the silence.
"Is this about Ed?"
I muttered out, "Yeah, is it that obvious?"
"Well, your desk has been like a florist recently, so I figured it had something to do with him. Does he want you back?"
I gave a nod of my head. He said,
"But you're still so confused, right?"
I laughed. "Are you reading my mind?"
"Call it an educated guess. I've been friends with Ed for a long time. I think I understand him."
He paused for a moment and then sighed.
"But it turns out I don't." I really don't want to see you suffer, Bella.
I asked. So, what do you think? Should I go back to Ed? Jim gently replied,
No, Bella, you shouldn't. You deserve a better person. Someone who truly loves you, not someone intent on playing mind games. Think about it. He just sends you flowers and gifts. But has he actually come and told you how he feels to your face?
Okay, so Jim had a point. Not once had Ed come and apologized to me. And it wasn't like he didn't have plenty of chances. We worked at the same company, for goodness sake. But what if he was too shy? Maybe it was because he didn't know whether I'd truly forgiven him or not, so he wanted to wait a while. Geez, this was difficult. I knew what Ed did was wrong, but I still loved him. And all the flowers, gifts, and love notes were getting to me. I knew it wouldn't be long before I caved and took him back because, as much as he'd hurt me, I longed to believe he still loved me as much as I loved him. After much pondering, I came to the decision that I wanted to give Ed another chance, but he'd have to make me truly believe in his love first. I was going to tell him this after work. But first, I had some work meeting with Jim, Ed, Ellie, and some of our other colleagues. After the meeting, Jim and I packed up and left the conference room first. On the way back to our seats, I found out I'd left my phone in there. And Jim came with me as he wanted to talk to Ed about something. As soon as I got to the door, before I opened it, I heard Ellie talking about me inside. Hey, so Bella is going to your parents' wedding anniversary, right? Then Ed said,
I don't know. I'm still working on it. We haven't got back yet.
Ellie replied, What are you doing? You must hurry up or else your parents will know you're lying. She paused a bit, then continued. It was all due to your carelessness to let your parents find out about that night. You need to make them believe that the girl who spent the night in your room was Bella. If they think it's Diane, you'll lose everything. What were they talking about? Why was it related to me? Whatever it was, I knew that he must have stayed with Diane, and now he had to lie to his parents that he was with me instead. Ed wanted to get back to me not because he still loved me, but just wanted to use me to cover for him. I immediately fell to my knees. Tears kept falling. I was really disappointed with Ed and even more with myself. I couldn't believe it. I'd continued to fall for Ed's deception. Again! Suddenly, Jim grabbed my hand, opened the door, and pulled me into the conference room. Ed and Ellie turned around in surprise. Jim shouted,
I can't believe you're that kind of jerk, Ed. How can you treat Bella like this? She'll never come back with you. If you don't love her anymore, stop hurting her. She deserves someone better than you.
Then he pointed at Ed and Ellie.
You two? I don't know what's going on, but I'll protect Bella. Don't you dare hurt her, or else you'll have me to answer to.
Hi, it's me, Bella again. Do you still remember my complicated love story with Ed, who's turned out to be the son of my big boss? Thank God I found out how much of a cheating jerk he was and broke free from that relationship. But then he again started to try hard to get me back. All the flowers and gifts must prove he still loved me, right? So I decided I was going to give him another chance. Only before I was able to tell him this, I overheard him talking to Ellie. It was pretty clear from their conversation that he only wanted to get back with me to hide the fact that he was still with Diane. Jim overheard them talking too, and he led me into the room and confronted them by saying,
You two? I don't know what's going on, but I'll protect Bella. Don't you dare hurt her, or else you'll have me to answer to.
On hearing him say this, I looked up at him through teary eyes. Ed and Ellie were the worst type of people, but luckily for me, Jim was the best. Right now, I felt so vulnerable, but at least his kind words made me feel like I wasn't alone. He was like a big brother that always made me feel so safe. Then he led me outside, saying,
Hell with those terrible people. Let's get out of here, Belle.
In a soulless state due to the shock, I followed him. He took me to the building rooftop, and it was good to breathe in some fresh air without anyone else gawping at me. We sat down, and he told me to take time to calm down and not to worry about the report that was due in that afternoon, as it could wait. He was looking at me with such caring eyes, and he even put his hand on mine as he said,
And even if you feel like taking leave today, it's okay. I actually...
He's so nice, but that made me feel kinda burdened, so I cut him off. Jim, thank you so much. If it wasn't for you back there, I'm sure I would have fainted in front of them. And thank you for being so understanding. But you're still my boss, and I'm still an employee. We shouldn't let my personal issues affect work. And Jim, please. He tried interrupting me with,
Bella, listen.
and,
But Bella...
but I still carried on. I'm beyond grateful. But please, next time, you don't have to do that, especially in the office. That will give people something to talk about again. You know how they love to gossip about me already. He kept staring down at the ground and didn't say anything else. I forced a smile and wiped my tears away. I'll be fine. I just need a few minutes alone right now. Then I'll go finish that report. Don't worry, Chief. He looked at me and let out a sigh, got up, then patted me on the shoulder.
Okay, great. Just so you know, I've always got your back. I'll do anything to help you forget that jerk if you want.
He smiled and left. I sat there alone for a while. I don't know if it was the strong breeze making my eyes teary again, or that I'd just simply reached the peak of sorrow. Now I knew that Ed's affair with Diane wasn't just a mistake, but he really didn't love me anymore. And not only that, he clearly didn't care about me at all. Else, he wouldn't have been as heartless as to use me for his own sake. After that, I tried pushing my pain and heartache to one side and focusing on my work. But it was hard. I knew my colleagues were whispering nasty things about me. There were so many times when I went to make a coffee or walked into the toilets, and they'd go deadly silent and snigger in my direction. I couldn't focus on doing anything anymore, and even the simplest of jobs took me triple as long to do. It got to the point where I considered walking into Jim's office and quitting then and there. I already had my resignation email saved to my drafts. I love this job, but the people here are too toxic, and now I felt too suffocated. My career is important to me, but so is my pride. And right now, being here in this negative environment wasn't doing me any favors. And knowing Ed was so near to me, well, it made my situation even harder. Talking about Ed, obviously, the flowers and gifts had stopped. He hadn't tried to contact me once since I overheard them, which says it all, really. I tried my best to avoid him. I once even hid behind the men's toilet door in a panic as I caught sight of him in the hallway, which got both me and some guys in there freaked out. At that awkward moment, I thought to myself, hey, what am I doing? Why am I acting like such a coward? I realized that I had nothing to feel ashamed about. Ed was the one who treated me like dirt. He should be the one hiding, not me. I realized then and there that I shouldn't have to run away from the job I love and was good at because of a man too much of a coward to be honest with me. This was my dream job, and I will keep it. To hell with Ed. If anything, I have to stay here and show him what he missed out on. To be honest, after that unexpected enlightening moment in the men's toilets, I felt much better and ready to move on. Now I could walk past Ed with my head held high. But you know what? Each time we crossed paths, I still felt my heart ache a little. Ugh, why was this still happening? Thankfully, I had Jim around to cheer me up, and also his little brother John, who started working at the company as an intern in Ed and Ellie's project management department. Right from the first day at work, he had already impressed me, walking into the room with such a bright smile and ran right over greeting everyone. Even complimented me on a design I was working on and stuff. I didn't even know that he was Jim's brother at the moment, but I already felt like I could befriend this kid. Our office needed more of this kind of positive energy. He's such a funny kid. He was always telling jokes and sending me memes. Soon, Jim, John, and me had grown pretty close, and we grabbed lunch together most days. John seemed smitten with Ellie. I mean, I couldn't blame him. She's beautiful. He sent her a coffee with a flirty note attached on it, and she took the coffee, but ripped off the note and stuck it onto John's forehead, saying, "This isn't what you're supposed to say to your boss," then walked off. Ouch! The poor kid sulked for the rest of the day and kept on grumbling about how women were hard work. Then Jim got annoyed and said,
Isn't what Ellie said correct? You should just stop it already. She's really not someone appropriate for you to mingle with.
Jim had a point. Not only was she his boss, but dating within the company would just cause more gossip and dramas. And trust me, I knew all about that. But John is on the stubborn side, so he wouldn't give up. He continued to show his affection towards her. One time, he handed her a heart-shaped box of chocolates, and she rolled her eyes at him, then gave them out to the rest of the office. Ed caught sight of that and found out, and everyone could see he wasn't happy about that. I mean, she is his sister and all, so he was always giving John dirty looks and making him do all the boring jobs. One time over lunch, John was annoyed because Ed had given him a bunch of work to do over the weekend. So he said to me,
"Oh my God, Bella. I don't understand what you ever saw in Ed. But thank God we're all done with him now. You deserve so much better."
Then he patted Jim while he was sipping on his coffee and almost caused him to choke on it. Then said,
"See? Look at our Jim. He's nice. He's handsome. He's right in front of you. What are you waiting for?"
Jim quickly glared at him, then smiled at me, joking,
"Excuse me for my dumb little brother."
I giggled. These two really had helped me through all the tough times, and I was so grateful to have them both around. But things were about to change, as Jim was assigned for a month-long overseas business trip. I can't deny that I felt kinda worried about being at work without him there. Suddenly, I felt nervous and kind of empty imagining the long month ahead, but at least I still had John. He would keep me sane. I just hoped Ed wouldn't cause me any issues, as dealing with them without Jim having my back would be tricky. The night before Jim's flight, the three of us had dinner, and John kept on pushing Jim to drive me home after that. On the drive home, I joked with him about how I actually felt nervous that he'd be absent for a while. He looked all serious, but didn't say anything back, like he was thinking something. I had to clear things up, so I said, "Hey, don't worry, I'm just joking. Come on, smile for me. I won't get to see this smile for another month, right?" He gave me this soft look, then said,
"I'll be back soon. Just wait for me."
When we arrived at my front door, I wished him a safe travel, and he waved, then drove away. But as I was on the porch step, rummaging through my purse to find my door key, I suddenly felt a hand on my shoulder. Startled, I turned around to see Jim. I was stuttering. Jim? Why? He cut me off.
"Don't say anything. Just listen to me first, Bella. I love you."
Hey, Bella here with the next part of my story. As difficult as it was having to work alongside my cheating ex Ed, I felt like I was dealing with it, and it helped loads that I had Jim and John around to cheer me up. Only, Jim was about to go away on a month-long work trip, and the thought of being left behind without him to support me was kinda scary. So, the three of us went out for a goodbye dinner. Then, when he dropped me off, he came out with the bombshell that he loved me. What? This was crazy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I mean, could I have misheard him? Staring at him in shock, I muttered out, What? Okay, so perhaps this wasn't the best way to respond, but I was in complete shock. He held my hand and said,
"Bella, I've liked you since the first day I met you, but you were Ed's girlfriend, so I had to keep my distance. That's why I seemed cold towards you."
Jim, I tried to say something, but he cut me off.
"Please, wait. I need to get this off my chest. Every time I took care of you, it wasn't because Ed asked me to. It's because I wanted to. I wanted to tell you everything when we overheard the conversation between Ed and Ellie, but I got cold feet. I was worried that you weren't over Ed yet, and that you still needed time to heal."
"Oh, Jim, I didn't know," I said. He continued.
"And, I was also afraid that you would reject me, and then you would feel awkward around me. But I don't think I could bear a whole month of keeping my feelings a secret. And, at least, this way, if you don't feel the same way, then I have a month overseas to get over you, right?"
He joked. Talk about surprising. I did not see this coming at all. I always knew Jim was there for me when I needed him, and he always knew when something was bothering me. It's only now I realized he was protecting me not as a big brother, but as a man who had feelings for me. Thinking about it, I was so preoccupied with Ed that I didn't see that Jim's affections towards me were growing. It felt nice to know that an amazing man like Jim liked me, especially after the trauma my heart had received from Ed. But that was the main problem. I still wasn't fully over Ed. So I replied, I'm really flattered for what you've been doing for me all this time. I don't know how to thank you. But this is so sudden. I don't know what else to do. My heart is pounding so fast right now. I don't even know why He smiled at me and gently stroked my hair.
Silly. I'm not asking you to give me an answer right now. Just think about it. You have a whole month without me ahead. Maybe then you'll figure it out.
He winked, then walked off. I could only manage to yell after him, "Safe flight, Jim! I'll wait for you!" He simply replied,
Good night, Bella.
I watched him drive away, then I went inside and threw myself on the bed. I tried processing everything that had just happened. Talk about information overload! I couldn't deal with this right now, and forced myself to sleep. I had to get up early tomorrow and take the bus to my hometown, as it was my granny's 90th party and my entire family would be there. When I arrived at my parents' house, everybody was already there. My mom and dad, my uncles and aunts, my lovely granny, my cousins, basically everyone. It felt so good to see them all. It turns out, being around my kind, loving, and supportive family was just what I needed right now. Yep, it definitely felt good to be home. I noticed that my father didn't look so great. He'd lost a lot of weight and kept on coughing. I asked him if he'd gone to the doctor about it, but he said it was just a cold and nothing to worry about. Granny's birthday was lovely and sweet. We decorated the house with balloons, bought her a delicious cake, and there was even a huge poster of George Clooney, as he's my granny's favorite actor. After lots of cake, I wheeled Granny out onto the front porch, and we had a catch-up. She said to me, "How's my little Bella? You look so skinny. You need to eat more. And when will you introduce me to that boyfriend of yours? You know, I'm not that young anymore, so hurry up." I know, I laughed. Granny continued, "Didn't you want to bring him last year? What's his name again? Ed." I just smiled and said nothing. But the strange thing was, when Granny mentioned Ed, all I could think about was Jim. I guess this meant I kinda missed him. Granny noticed my sad face, so she asked what was bothering me. But I told her it was nothing. I was just tired because of the long ride. But then she said something to me that made me think. "You know, sweetie, I've lived for a long time, and I've learned that there are only a few good people left out there. So when you find the right person, you've got to fight for them. It might not feel like the right time, but ask yourself this. When is? Don't let the past ruin your future." She smiled and kissed my hand. Oh gosh, Granny, that was so deep. Hearing her saying that made me seriously think about my feelings for Jim. He was truly a good man, but I was so obsessed with all the bad things Ed had done to me that I'd been oblivious to Jim's feelings towards me, and my feelings towards him. Oh my God. I was in love with Jim. I'm so stupid. Now I knew what I needed to do. Thanks, Granny. I love you to the moon and back. I kissed her on the forehead and pushed her back inside the house. I went upstairs to get my laptop and to send my resignation email, which I've been keeping in my drafts for these past few months, and I sent it to Ed. Yes, that's correct. I finally did it. I quit my job. I wanted to end the dramas in Starcross Estate and begin a new chapter in my life with Jim. Now, I could stay home with my family for a week or so, as I'd already quit my job, so it's not like they could fire me or anything. This would be my healing time. Then I took my phone out and sent Jim a message saying, "When you're back in town, can we please meet up? We need to finish that conversation we had last time. I can't wait to see you again." Smiley face. Jim instantly replied back, "Me too." Smiley face. But then, something happened that turned my whole world upside down. My mom screamed out that something was wrong with Dad, so I rushed over to them and saw that he was on the floor, unconscious. We took him to the hospital, and they carried out loads of tests and x-rays on him. Then the doctor told us the results. My father has a disease called heart arrhythmia. An arrhythmia describes an irregular heartbeat. With this condition, a person's heart may beat too quickly, too slowly, too early, or with an irregular rhythm. In his case, his heart beat too slowly. It was a genetic disease that my grandpa had also had. My father needed surgery to implant a device, called a pacemaker, into his chest. This is a small device that uses electrical pulses to prompt the heart to beat at a regular minimum rate. You wouldn't believe how much it all cost, and his health insurance wouldn't cover it. So the main problem was money. We needed lots of it, and quickly. If my father didn't have this operation soon, he could have a stroke or heart failure. So, over the past days, we asked everybody we knew. Each friend and acquaintance lent us some money, but it still wasn't enough. It wasn't even a quarter of the amount we needed. We also tried to get a loan from the bank, but the procedure would take at least a month, which was too long. Time was running out, and it felt like there was nothing I could do to stop it. It was horrible. Ever since the day I sent my resignation email, Ed called a few times, but I really wasn't in the mood to answer his calls. I was so worried about my dad, and let's face it, Ed was the last person I wanted to deal with. But then some days later, I got a text from him saying that he'd tried calling me to find out why I'd quit, but I never picked up. So he called my cousin, and she'd told him about my father's condition. Then something crazy happened. Ed offered to pay all of my dad's medical bills. But there was a catch. He rang me up to explain what he wanted. And whoa, you won't believe what he was asking me to do. Hey, it's Bella again. I'm here to tell you the next part of my story. And trust me, you won't want to miss it. So, being back home with my family made me realize that I needed to make some positive changes in my life. So, I emailed Ed and quit my job, and I decided to stay with my family for a few weeks before Jim got back from his business trip. Then, I was going to go back and confess my feelings for him. But then, I found out my dad was sick, and he needed surgery. Ed found out and messaged me saying he'd pay for everything, providing I followed his demands. Whoa, his conditions were insane. Firstly, I had to stay at the company. And secondly, he wanted me to go with him to his parents' wedding anniversary party and pretend to be his girlfriend. Oh my God, this made me so angry. He was using me to cover up his relationship with Diane. His parents must have found out that he was still seeing Diane and threatened to dismiss him. So he fabricated some story to tell them that he was back with me instead. So now they wanted him to prove this by taking me to their party. This sucked. But there were bigger things than my pride to think of right now. My dad needed surgery. Every second counted. So I threw away my ego and replied to Ed, "Yeah, I'll do it." He hung up, and I realized something. Even though I wanted to end things with Ed, the universe had a funny way of stopping this from happening. And it seemed like it wouldn't let me be with Jim, the guy I truly wanted to be with. Talk about ironic. Ed transferred the money over to me. I told Mom that Starcross Estate had lent me the money. Ugh, I hated giving them the credit for this, but it was a feasible story. Besides, it was partly true. Waiting around while my dad was in surgery was the most nerve-wracking experience of my life. Luckily, it all went well, and now he just needed plenty of time to rest and recover. The last week had been such a blur of emotions and drama. All I wanted to do now was sleep. But no, I had to endure a whole day with Ed and his family. The morning of the party arrived, and Ed picked me up. I didn't say much to him on the journey there. Instead, I just stared out the window. As we pulled up the longest driveway I'd ever seen, he turned to me and said,
"Bella, I hope you're more cheerful around my family. We made a deal."
Jeez, what did I ever see in this man? He was the worst. Yeah, I understand. I will. I forced out a smile. He gave me a stern look and said,
"Just make sure you do."
Ugh! All this for Diane? She was pretty and all, but she wasn't even a nice person, and she had zero morals. Whatever. I just needed to endure this party, then I could stay away from Ed. Okay, so his parents' house was like a fairy tale castle. It was huge. Ed kept on introducing me to different relatives, and my jaw hurt from all my fake smiling. When his parents saw me, they came over and his mom said, "You must be Bella. I've heard so much about you. Please, make yourself at home." I greeted them back. "Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Stafford. You have a lovely home. And happy 30th wedding anniversary." Then his mom replied, "Oh, thanks, dear. Please, call me Judy. You two should try some of the buffet. The grilled oysters are spectacular." For 2 years, I'd longed to be included in Ed's life and to be invited along to family parties, but he always seemed to keep me far apart. Now, I wanted to be far apart from Ed, and he was making me stay close. Ugh, this sucked. When we were walking through the crowd and greeting his family's partners and relatives, Ed whispered to me,
Thanks a lot for being here. I really appreciate it.
I glared at him and said, "Well, you didn't leave me much choice, did you? And I know why I'm here. Don't forget that I heard everything between you and Ellie. You're just using me. I hope after that, we don't have to see each other anymore." He replied,
But you need the money, right? I think you should be grateful instead of being angry with me. I helped you save your father's life. I know how much he means to you. So can you please take my arm and let me introduce you to more of my relatives?
This was so frustrating, but he was right. I agreed to this so I could save my dad, and it's a choice I would make again and again. My family was everything to me, so now I'd just have to suck it up and let Ed introduce me to his. All this schmoozing people was thirsty work, so we walked over to the bar. OMG. You wouldn't believe who was there. Jim! I stared at him open-mouthed and immediately let go of Ed's arm. Jim looked even more shocked than I did. I wanted to go over to him, but Ed grabbed my hand and whispered to me,
Remember our deal.
So all I could do was to continue my role as Ed's girlfriend. Jim instantly left the party with a disappointed look. At the end of the party, Ed dragged me over to the balcony to talk. I asked him, why was Jim here? He's not supposed to be back for another 2 weeks.
Oh, our business partner closed the deal already, so he came back early. He insisted on it, as he has a date or something. I heard he even took an earlier flight than the group. Anyway, you did a great job today. Everybody was convinced that you're my girlfriend, and I think we should keep it that way.
Wait, what? What do you mean? I asked him. He replied,
Well, I want you to come back to me, to be my girlfriend, just for an extended period of time, and then we'll break up.
I said in anger, Are you insane? Why would I ever get back together with you? Hell no!
How about I give you more money? I believe that after surgery, your father will need lots of medication, and I know it costs a lot. Besides, it will just be for a bit. Then after it, we'll go our separate ways. So, do we have a deal?
This is insane, but he's not wrong. The medical bills seemed never ending, so I needed to face facts that while he was paying them, he basically owned me. Oh my God, this would hurt Jim so much. This was breaking my heart. Jim was the one person who'd been there to support me, and now he'd think I was betraying him. And for that jerk Ed? But I had no other choice. I couldn't stand by and watch my dad suffer, not when I had the chance to help him. So, with a heavy heart, I shook Ed's hand in agreement. The next day, I walked with Ed into work. This was the last place I wanted to be right now, and all eyes were on me. One girl came up to me and told me she thought I was brave for getting back with the man I loved. Ugh, please. While other people sneered at me. I knew they thought I was an idiot for taking him back. At this point, I didn't care about anything. I just wanted it to end soon so I could get out of there. I met John in the hallway, and I could see in his face how disappointed he was. He rushed off so he didn't have to talk to me. I mean, it's not like I could blame him. Then I walked into my department and saw that Jim was standing in the middle of the room chatting to some of my colleagues. When everybody saw me, they rushed over and greeted me, except for Jim. He went straight to his office. He only talked to me when a project was assigned to me, but he only talked to me about work. His voice was cold, and he barely looked at me. This was awful. I wanted to tell him everything, but I knew I couldn't tell him a thing. I was no longer the brave, passionate, honorable girl he used to know. Now, I was so pathetic staying with a bad man just for his money. I never wanted him to know this, even if he would understand my situation or not. It really hurt. I hoped Jim would wait for me, and told myself it would all end okay. But then, a few days later, I walked into work, and a colleague came over to me and told me Jim had quit. What? I couldn't lose him like this. Not without a fight. He was the only positive thing for me right now. Everything was going in the wrong direction. I had to tell him it was all a misunderstanding, no matter what he thought. So I decided to go to Ed's office to end all of this. But then, an email popped up on my phone. It was from John. There were some pictures attached. I opened them. Oh my God, you wouldn't believe who was in those photos. I was so shocked that I dropped my phone on the floor. Hey, it's me, Bella, back with the penultimate episode of my story. So, I was stuck pretending to be Ed's girlfriend, and in return, he was paying for my dad's medical treatment. I couldn't predict Jim took a flight back home sooner and appeared to be right there to see me and Ed together. I just wanted to tell Jim everything, but eventually, mine and Ed's thing was not just a one-off. I had to continue our fake relationship so he would cover my dad's medical bills. Worse still, Jim's quit his job, and I didn't even get the chance to explain myself to him. And just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, John emailed me over a picture, and oh my God, I was not expecting to see this. I stared at the picture, dumbfounded. Ed and Ellie were kissing passionately in a car. And although their faces weren't clear, it was obviously them. I walked towards Ed's office and barged in without knocking. Ed and Ellie were there, and on seeing me, they raised their heads and looked at me with puzzled eyes. After a few minutes of silence, I calmed myself down and stammered, How is this? You two are siblings, right? Talking was getting me nowhere, so I showed them the photo. Ellie immediately grabbed the phone out of my hand and said worryingly, Bella, calm down. Please, listen to me. It's not what you think. I can explain. Ed stopped her and said, Are you sure we should? They looked at each other confused for a moment, and then Ellie sighed and replied, There's no other way now. My heart was beating like crazy. I had no idea what was going on, but I had a feeling I was about to find out. Ellie told me that it was true her mom and Ed's dad used to be in a complicated relationship. They broke up and went their separate ways years ago. Later, her mom had her and became a single mom, but Ellie knew who her dad was, and it was definitely not Mr. Stratford. Wait, what? So you guys are not siblings? I couldn't believe my ears. Yes, Ellie continued. When I was 17, my mom got sick and found out she just had a few days left. In a desperate attempt to secure my future, she told Ed's father that I was his daughter. I knew this wasn't the truth, but back then, it was the only way. Ed came to Ellie to show his encouragement.
I was so mean to her at first. I hated her for being my dad's unacceptable past. So when my dad arranged for Ellie to be an intern in the company, and then promoted her to be a project manager, I determined that I had to try my best to kick her out.
Oh, so that was the reason. The whole time, I thought he had the same passion as me. But right from the start, his target was all about her. Ellie sat me down and said, Ed was so childish back then. As soon as he graduated, he showed up in the company as an heir, took over my position, and forced me to become his assistant. This frustrated me, as I worked so hard to get the job, so I wasn't very nice to him at first. Now they were officially looking at each other with those loving eyes in front of me? Ugh! I had no choice but to listen to them till the end to find out the truth. Ed added,
I could clearly see her opposition, but just to me personally, she was always professional, talking about work.
So was he. Ellie continued. Over time, I realized he was not a talentless heir, but a great leader. Soon, I saw him as a man and felt for him. However, he believed I was his half-sister, so I had to keep my feelings in my heart and silently stay by his side to care for and support him. We often went on business trips and to parties together, and gradually became inseparable. I turned to Ed and saw that he was looking at Ellie with a look filled with love, a look he'd never given me. So I asked, "When did you two start falling in love?" Ed looked awkward, held Ellie's hand, and said,
"It was during a business trip in Las Vegas. We'd been chatting to a lot of guests, so we drank quite a lot. Then we went back to the hotel and she kissed me on my cheek."
He turned to look at Ellie with loving eyes and continued,
"At first, I was shocked and pulled her up, but after she confessed her feelings for me and let me know the truth, that time I'd felt sick with worry about it all. But on finding out the truth, my feelings for her instantly became overwhelming. So..."
Ellie interrupted him. "We spent the night together and decided to date in secret. As you know, if this was discovered, I would definitely have to leave the house and the company. So we wanted to wait until he had a foothold in the company, and he could take care of me no matter what happened." I couldn't believe what happened. Las Vegas. I remembered that trip. It was Ed's business trip way back when I just started working at Starcross. I angrily looked at Ed and asked, "So you'd been cheating on me for the entire time?" Now it all made perfect sense. "You were so cold and indifferent to me because you didn't love me at all. I was just a cover story, right?" Ed looked at me and said,
"I'm sorry, Bella. I never wanted to hurt you, but I couldn't tell you the truth and risk exposing my relationship with Ellie."
I replied, "You're selfish and unkind, and using me as a pawn in your plan was unfair." I couldn't stop shaking. This whole thing was such a mess. One thing I don't understand, though, is Diane. Where did she come into this? Ellie immediately interjected, as if to justify Ed. "It wasn't like that. She's never been part of the plan." It turned out that during a business trip to New York, Diane accidentally caught Ellie and Ed dating at the mall. She was so shocked seeing them kissing, but she quickly informed on the situation and walked to them. Ed and Ellie were flummoxed being caught, but Diane just asked Ed to break up with me and officially let her take that position instead. She said that she didn't care about their dramas and just wanted to gain the reputation of being a boss's girlfriend. In fact, she didn't care about Ed because she already had a boyfriend. She threatened that if Ed didn't agree, then she'd expose his relationship with Ellie to the entire company. That would not only destroy their dignity, but it could also risk Stafford family's public humiliation. Ellie continued, "We didn't know how else to handle this, so we had to accept her request. But she also set up the drama at the hotel and called you over. Ed was forced to be part of that show-off plan. We were also tired of Diane's business." Ellie looked at Ed, then continued, "Fortunately, once we captured Diane and proved that she was stealing company designs and selling them on, after that, we could end everything with Diane and told her that if she revealed our relationship, we would sue her." When Ellie finished talking, Ed turned to me and said,
"I know I was cruel to you, Belle, but I had to. It helped us keep this secret for a while."
"Then why did you come back to me and insist on fixing our feelings?" I shouted angrily at Ed. The two of them looked at each other for a while. Ed explained to me that one day, when his parents were on a business trip, Ellie and he arranged to enjoy a romantic night in his room. Suddenly, his parents came back and entered without knocking. Ellie escaped in time, but Ed's mother still noticed a girl had just been in his room. At first, they thought it was Diane, and they weren't happy about it. He insisted that it wasn't Diane, but they still refused to believe him. They threatened to throw him out of the company because of it, as dating a girl who stole from them didn't set a good example to their clients. So he had to lie to them that I was his mystery girl. His parents had calmed down, but were still a bit suspicious. So they asked him to take me to their wedding anniversary party to prove that he was really with me and not Diane. Ellie said, "That's why Ed had to find a way to get back with you, but you weren't making it easy. At that time, He had intended to give up, but coincidentally, we found out about your father. So I told him to take that chance in the hope that everything could be resolved. I looked Ed in the eye and said, "You're a bad guy. Just to cover up your secret, you were willing to do those bad things. You treat people like puppets that you control as you please. And you even used my dad's illness to manipulate me. Did you know that it's because of you Jim left without saying goodbye? It's also because of you I no longer have a chance to honestly tell him how I feel about him." I stood there, tears in my eyes. Ellie gave me a regretful look and tried to explain. "Bella, I'm so sorry. I just wanted you to go to the party with Ed so his parents wouldn't throw him out of the company. Little did I know that they really liked you and was so proud of Ed having such a clever girlfriend, so we have to keep on lying."
Ed continued, "It's all my fault, not Ellie's. But honestly, I didn't know that you and Jim had feelings for each other. I'm sorry."
I yelled at him. "Of course you didn't! You only think about yourself!" I was so sick of listening to them at this point. I just wanted to get out of there and never set eyes on either of them ever again. But then Ed's phone rang. It was his mum. He answered straight away, and she firmly told him to come home at once and to bring Ellie and me with him. Whoa, what? Why me? What was going on? Hey, it's Bella, and I'm back with the final part of my story. Last time, I found out the shocking truth about Ed. Turns out, he never loved me. No, instead, he was in love with his half-sister, Ellie, who isn't actually his biological sister at all. It was so much information to process already. But to make it even worse, Ed's mum messaged him, insisting all three of us go to her house right away. As soon as I entered Stafford's lavish home, I felt so nervous. Ed spoke out.
"Mom, Dad, what's wrong?"
Mrs. Stafford gave him a stern look and replied, "You need to explain this right now." Then she showed the same picture of Ed and Ellie that John had sent me. Before anyone had a chance to reply, she looked at me. "You're Ed's girlfriend? Did you know about this?" I was confused, then said, I only found out today." She was furious and yelled at Ed and Ellie. "What is this? You two are crazy? How could you do such incestuous things?" She didn't let Ed and Ellie explain, then continued. "Did it cross your minds what would happen if other people saw this picture? I'm so ashamed of both of you." Ed stood up and replied,
"But, Mom, we don't share the same bloodline. Why can't I love Ellie?"
His mom looked so confused, so Ellie looked at her with tear-filled eyes and said, "It's true. Dad's, well, he's not my biological dad. It was my mom's idea. She just wanted me to have a secure future. I never wanted to deceive anyone, and I honestly do care about you all, and I'm so sorry." Mrs. Stafford shouted, "What did you say? You aren't my husband's biological child? You don't have any blood relationships with us whatsoever? In that case, why do you dare live here in our house? And now you're using my son so you can get your hands on his fortunes?" Ed replied,
"Mom, don't say that. Ellie is not that kind of girl. I love her, and I know she loves me too."
Mr. Stafford, who'd been sitting there silently, suddenly spoke up.
"I know. I've always known. I took a DNA test years ago, but I decided to keep this secret and continue to raise Ellie because I love her as my own."
He looked at her.
"You've always been my little docile daughter, and I'm always proud of you, Ellie."
Ellie burst into tears. Ed hugged her and comforted her. Mrs. Stafford was so angry, and she said, "You all knew the truth, but chose to leave me in the dark. I demand she leaves this house right now, else I will." Then she stormed out of the room. The atmosphere was frosty, and I seriously wanted to get out of there. Mr. Stafford apologized to me for being dragged into all this drama. I felt super awkward, so I made out that it was getting late and left. This whole thing was such a mess, but I had my own issues to deal with. Their problems weren't anything to do with me anymore. I was finally free of Ed once and for all, and it was such a relief. A week passed, and even though I'd sent Jim dozens of messages, he hadn't replied to any of them. I was pretty sure he'd changed his number. This sucked, so I decided to meet John to explain myself to him and to see if he had Jim's contact details. I met him in a bar, and after a few drinks, I asked him, "You sent the mail to Mr. and Mrs. Stafford, right? Why did you do it?" John smiled and replied, "Because I hated Ed. He stole my Ellie and also made Jim misunderstand you. What a jerk." I replied, "For what it's worth, I really do think Ed and Ellie love each other. Besides, Ellie isn't right for you. You'll find someone amazing, John. You just wait." After that, I told John everything that had happened and admitted my love for Jim. To my surprise, John smiled and told me that he already knew everything, as one time, when he was going to surprise Ellie with a cake, he overheard Ed telling her how he was paying for my dad's medical bills in exchange for me pretending to be his girlfriend. Then he hugged Ellie and kissed her on the top of the head. After that, John had doubts about their relationship, so he followed them and took some pictures. After discovering the truth, John met Jim to tell him everything, but Jim just looked sad. Then John said, "I've thought about this a lot, and I think the real reason Jim was so disappointed was because when you ran into difficulties, you went to Ed for help instead of him." It hadn't even crossed my mind how bad it must have looked. All I could think about was my dad and how I needed to help him, which is why I jumped on Ed's offer of financial help. In hindsight, I should have discussed it with Jim first. I told John how much I missed Jim and wanted to see him. He said he'd try to help, but he didn't know where Jim was either, and that knowing his brother, he probably just needed some time to process everything. A whole month passed by, and I hadn't heard a word from Jim. Every morning when I saw John at work, I hoped today would be the day he had good news for me, but it never happened. Jim definitely seemed to be a man who didn't want to be found. At least, not by me. I missed him like crazy and just wanted to hug him tight so that he couldn't disappear. Everyone in the company now knew the truth about Ed and Ellie. At first, they were shocked and talked about nothing else. But now, no one seemed that bothered. For me, I wasn't angry with them anymore. Life was too short for that. Anyway, Ed insisted on still paying my dad's medical bills, which I was very thankful for. One day, Ed and Ellie suddenly texted that they wanted to meet me. I was kind of curious, so I met them at a cafe near our company. I walked in to see both of them looked so happy together. It seemed like things got better for them. "Am I interrupting this lovely moment?" I joked and sat down next to Ellie. She blushed, and I'd never seen her so happy before. Ed told me that his parents seemed to accept their relationship. Even Mrs. Stafford was beginning to mellow down, and she hadn't kicked Ellie out. Then Ellie said, "We wanted to make amends for everything we put you through, so we found Jim for you." Then she pulled out an envelope from her bag and said it was Jim's address and a letter of recommendation if I wanted to apply to the company where Jim was working. Was it real? I couldn't believe it. Finally, I'd found him! There was no more time to waste, so I packed my bag and hopped on a plane. Even though it was dark when I landed, I went straight to the address Ellie had given me. When I was walking in the courtyard of the building with my suitcase, then suddenly, I saw someone. OMG. It was Jim! I couldn't believe it. I dropped the suitcase and ran to hug him. At first, Jim looked shocked and tried to push me away, but then he hugged me back. Jim drove me to a riverside near his apartment. We sat silently, drank beer, and looked at the lights sparkling from the buildings. I asked him, "This place is great, huh? Do you come here a lot?" He stayed silent for a while, and then replied, "One time, I found it when I was jogging. Sitting here with some cans of beer is awesome, so I often come here when I feel tired and miss you." What he said had crushed my heart. I turned to look at him. He'd lost some weight and looked sad. I told him the truth about what had happened and said, I'm so sorry. At that time, all I could think about was saving my dad. So when Ed called me and said he would help me, I didn't think twice. And I also thought that the deal would end soon, and I just wanted to hide it all. It's all my fault for not thinking about your feelings, but you also left me without saying anything. Even your own brother doesn't know where you are.
Jim spoke out. I didn't tell John, as I knew he'd tell you, and I needed to be alone. When you ran into difficulties, you didn't need me. You just...
Without letting him finish his sentence, I cried out, "You didn't even give me a chance to explain! You just left me! I miss you like crazy!" Jim rushed to hug me, wiped my tears, and comforted me.
I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have left like that. I really miss you too.
We kissed, and I still wondered if this was just a dream. Finally, I'd found him, and I definitely wasn't losing him again. When we finished kissing, I looked up and saw a shooting star. OMG, it was such an amazing end to the perfect day, and I took it as a sign that we were meant to be together forever. That was it. After that, I got a job at the company where Jim was working, and officially moved into his apartment. Oh, and we're getting married next month, and I can't wait. If in doubt, then you should follow the wise words my granny once told me. There are only a few good people left out there. So when you find the right person, you've got to fight for them. It might not feel like the right time, but ask yourself this: when is? Don't let the past ruin your future. So basically, you should always follow your heart and not let what's meant to be pass you by.